The ocean stretched endless before us, grey and indifferent. We were not soldiers anymore, not proud defenders of the Reich, not even men with names. We were prisoners of war, crammed into the belly of a ship that groaned as it crossed the Atlantic. Chains did not bind our wrists, yet a weight heavier than iron pressed us down. Shame, hunger, uncertainty. I was 23, captured in the winter of 1944. My division had been shattered in France. We were told we'd be marched to a camp in England. Instead, weeks later, I found myself staring at a skyline of strange shapes and tall cranes. New York Harbor. America. The land of the enemy. Whispers rippled through us as we disembarked. They'll parade us through the streets. They'll shoot us. We'll die here. Years of propaganda had painted Americans as monsters, crude, merciless, hungry for revenge. I expected spit in my face, stones hurled, perhaps worse. But no mob waited. Instead, American soldiers in crisp uniforms stood at attention, herding us into lines. Their rifles were slung casually, not aimed at our chests. They gave orders firmly, but not with cruelty. We were marched to trains, then to camps deep in the American countryside. The first shock was the landscape. Fields rolled out in endless green, barns dotted with bright red roofs, rivers glinting in sunlight. Even after years of war, America looked untouched. No bomb craters scarred the earth, no burned villages. The air smelled of grass and harvest, not smoke. We reached the camp by nightfall. Wooden barracks, wire fences, guard towers. But inside, the bunks had mattresses, and the mess hall served food that made us hesitate. Potatoes, meat, white bread softer than clouds. At first, many refused to eat, suspicious of poison. But hunger won quickly. I remember biting into that bread. Not grey sawdust bread, but real bread, golden and soft. My eyes synced. I swallowed hard, tasting something I had thought lost forever. That night, I lay awake in my bunk, listening to the snores of men who had eaten until their bellies ached. Outside, an American guard hummed a tune, casual, unafraid. I thought of Germany, the rubble, the ruins, the endless fear. For the first time, doubt crept in. Maybe we had not known our enemy at all. The days settled into routine. Roll call at dawn, work assignments, meals. We chopped wood, repaired fences, sometimes worked on nearby farms. To our surprise, the Americans treated us fairly. They did not strike us when we faltered. They did not starve us. Some even offered cigarettes, trading for carved trinkets or sketches we made in idle hours. It was on a farm that I first spoke to an American civilian. An older man, his hands rough with years of work, stood watching as we hauled hay. He studied me, then said in slow, careful German, "You work hard. Good." His voice carried no malice, only matter-of-fact respect. I was stunned into silence. That evening I told the others. Some laughed bitterly, others shrugged. But a seed had been planted. The enemy we had been told would torture us, instead offered kindness. The guards noticed our unease. One of them, a young man from Texas, said with a grin, "You'll get used to it. This ain't Germany. We don't starve our prisoners." His accent was thick, his words simple, but the meaning cut deep. Slowly, suspicion gave way to something else. Curiosity. We began to watch the Americans more closely, not as enemies, but as people. They joked among themselves, shared stories of farms, factories, families waiting at home. They did not spit on us or curse our names. They simply lived, and in their living, they pulled us into a world we did not understand. At night, in the barracks, whispers grew. They treat us better than our own officers did. Maybe they aren't monsters. Maybe they are. Human. But none of us dared say the most dangerous thought of all, that perhaps America was not the enemy we had been taught to hate. The camp was not paradise, but compared to the ruins of Germany, it felt like another world. Hunger no longer stalked us. The bunks were hard but clean. Each morning we were given work assignments, and though the guards carried rifles, they never barked or struck us. For men who had grown used to brutality, the absence of it was disarming. Most days we worked inside the camp, repairing fences, tending gardens, chopping wood. But sometimes we were sent outside to nearby farms desperate for hands, while American men fought overseas. At first we marched fearfully, shoulders tight, waiting for insults or stones. Instead, farmers greeted us with wary nods, then handed us tools. The first time I lifted a pitchfork on American soil, I felt humiliation burning in my chest. I had been a soldier, now I was a farmhand. But the farmer beside me, an old man with weathered skin, worked silently, sweat pouring down his face. He did not curse me. He did not call me enemy. He simply worked, and in the rhythm of labor, something inside me softened. At noon, his wife brought food, sandwiches thick with meat, apples so crisp their skins split under my teeth. She set the plate on a table and gestured for us to eat. I hesitated, suspicious, but hunger and curiosity won. The bread was soft, the meat savory, the apple sweet beyond belief. Tears stung my eyes. The woman watched quietly, then said, "Eat. You're young. You need strength." Her German was broken, but her intent was clear. I had braced for hatred. Instead, I was given kindness. That night, back in the barracks, I told the others. Some scoffed. "It's a trick. They fatten us before sending us to die." But others grew quiet, their eyes distant. Seeds of doubt had been planted in all of us. Days turned into weeks. On farms, we learned that not every American saw us as monsters. Children peeked from behind doors, curious rather than afraid. Once, a boy of no more than 10 tossed me a baseball. I caught it instinctively, startled. He grinned. In that moment, war felt far away. Inside the camp, the shocks continued. We were shown movies, American reels played on projectors in the mess hall. The first time the lights dimmed and moving pictures flickered across the screen. We stared in awe. Comedies, romances, even newsreels. They showed a world so alive, so abundant, that we could hardly believe it. Women laughing in bright dresses, families picnicking in sunlit parks, couples dancing to music we had never heard. Marta, who had sat beside me, whispered, "If this is America, no wonder they beat us." There was no bitterness in her voice, only wonder. Then came Coca Cola. I remember the day clearly. An American guard, perhaps amused by our curiosity, offered us bottles of dark liquid capped with tin. He popped one open, the fizz hissing, and handed it over. Suspicion flared, but I took a sip. Sweetness exploded on my tongue, bubbles racing across my throat. I coughed, then laughed, the sound strange in my own ears. Others tried, their eyes widening. "This tastes like nothing I know," Greta said softly. For years we had known only hunger, scarcity, bitterness. Now sweetness, frivolous, joyful sweetness, filled our mouths. It was intoxicating. We passed the bottles around, reluctant to finish. That night the barracks buzzed with talk of Coca Cola, as though it were a miracle. Church visits deepened the unraveling. Local congregations sometimes invited POWs to attend services. At first we went stiffly, wary. But inside, the Americans sang hymns we half recognized, words of forgiveness and peace echoing under wooden rafters. Women smiled at us, some offering handshakes. One pressed a small loaf of bread into my hands, whispering, "Peace." I nearly wept. Friendship, tentative and fragile, grew in small gestures. A guard who shared cigarettes, a farmer who thanked us for honest work, children who giggled as we stumbled through English words. We had expected chains, hatred, punishment. Instead, we found something harder to endure: humanity. At night, whispers filled the barracks. "They treat us better than our own officers did." They do not hate us. Could we stay here? After? The idea was dangerous. We were still prisoners. But the thought lingered. America was not rubble. It was abundance, laughter, warmth. For men who had lost everything, the temptation was unbearable. The slow unraveling of enmity had begun. And in its place, something unexpected was taking root. Respect, even admiration. By late 1945, the war had ended. But for us, captivity lingered. The barbed wire still stood. The guard towers still cast long shadows. Yet something had changed. We were no longer enemies to the Americans, nor entirely prisoners. We had become laborers, neighbors, even acquaintances to those we once imagined would kill us. Rumors of repatriation spread daily. Some men whispered with eagerness to return home, to see what family survived, to walk German soil again. But others, myself included, felt dread coil in our chests. Home was rubble. Letters that reached us told of starvation, ruined cities, and the bitter winter gripping Europe. Here in America we ate daily, worked without fear, and glimpsed a future unscarred by bombs. One evening as we stacked hay bales on a farm, the old farmer who oversaw us leaned on his pitchfork and said, "When this is over, some of you should stay. We could use hands like yours." His words were casual, but they struck like lightning. The idea had hovered unspoken in our minds. Now it was spoken aloud. In the barracks that night, the men argued. "Impossible," one spat. "They will send us back." Another countered. "Why not? They see we can work. They trust us." Greta, one of the women from another camp who occasionally crossed paths with us during joint labor, said firmly, "If they allow me, I will not return. Germany is ashes. Here there is bread, work, life." Her voice shook with conviction. No one mocked her. Friendships deepened. Some guards shared photographs of their families, pointing out wives and children, smiling as though we too might understand. We did. We carried our own ghosts of family. Local farmers invited POWs to share meals after long harvest days. We sat at their tables, awkward at first, then gradually eased by laughter and clinking cutlery. I remember one Sunday dinner vividly. A farmer's daughter, no older than 12, placed a piece of apple pie before me. "For you," she said shyly. My throat closed. I thanked her in broken English. When I tasted it, sweet, warm, spiced with cinnamon, tears blurred my vision. She looked startled. Her mother touched her shoulder and whispered, "He remembers home." And she was right. Not every encounter was kind. Some Americans glared, their eyes hard with loss. For them, we would always be the enemy. But more often, we found gestures of humanity that disarmed us more than any weapon. Each act of kindness chipped away at the walls we had built inside. When officials finally announced repatriation, many begged to stay. Some wrote petitions, others pleaded directly with camp officers. "Do not send us back. Kay," we said. "We can work, we can build, we want to live here." Some requests were granted, especially for those who proved indispensable on farms. Others were denied. I was among those sent home, my heart heavy. Returning to Germany was like stepping into a graveyard. Cities lay in ruins, families scattered, hunger gnawed again. I spoke often of America, of bread, of Coca Cola, of fields untouched by war. Some listened with disbelief, others with envy. I felt like a man who had glimpsed another world only to be dragged back. Yet the seeds had been planted. Many who had been POWs returned later, emigrating to America when the chance came. They became farmers, laborers, even business partners with those who had once guarded them. Friendships endured, letters crossing oceans, bonds stronger than the war that once divided us. In time, the story of German POWs in America became one not of hatred, but of transformation. We arrived as captives, filled with fear and suspicion. We left with memories of kindness, with lessons about dignity, with the knowledge that enemies could become partners. I am an old man now, but when I close my eyes, I see the first day in camp, the soft bread on my tray, the laughter of children on farms, the shimmer of Coca Cola bubbles. I hear the hymns in American churches, smell the apple pie set before me. These were not weapons, but they defeated us more thoroughly than any bomb. From POWs to partners, that is the legacy. And it is why, even after all these years, I can say without shame, the enemy I feared showed me how to live again,